lot today about how when you walk around this event, you are filled with a sense of hope. You know, in the world around us, I don't know about you, but when I open up the newspaper or when I watch documentaries, including the ones that my team makes sometimes, you know, you feel a sense of hopelessness. You feel like the climate crisis is this massive monster that is so hard to tackle. But I think for me personally, just walking around, meeting all of the entrepreneurs, meeting the startups, it makes me feel like if our planet is in their hands, in corporation like Bupa's hands, if you have other smaller organizations working with them and it's in their hands, we're going to be in a very, very, very good spot. And I think this next panel kind of speaks to that. It is about the power of having a solutions-oriented mindset. The world is experiencing compassion fatigue. You know, people are tired of hearing about what the problems are. We do know what they are. Deborah was right when she said that so much has changed. We have the knowledge and the awareness, but we need the hope. So for the next panel, we're going to be talking about how solutions-oriented approaches can help people to join the climate movement. Please welcome to the stage Nigel Sullivan, Chief Sustainability and People Officer at Bupa, Solitaire Townsend, Chief Solutionist and CEO of Futura. What a cool title, Chief Solutionist. And Sally Uran, CEO of Forum for the Future. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. We've got two real great keynote speakers before they take to the stage. Let me introduce them to you. So, Solitaire Townsend. Solitaire is a renowned sustainability expert who works with some of the world's most influential organizations to activate social justice and environmental restoration. She's co-founder and chief solutionist at Futura, specializing in branding, strategy, behavior change, and consumer campaigns in the field of sustainability. She is an official nominator for Prince William's Earthshot Prize and a member of the working group that rewrote the United Nations rules for business net zero. Futura are kicking off a piece of work with Bupa as part of our Sustainability Academy, helping to build sustainability capabilities and behavior framework. Welcome.
Thank you.
And of course, already a friend of Bupa, Dr. Sally Uran. Sally leads Forum for the Future's mission to create a just and regenerative future in which both people and planet thrive. She's particularly passionate about the potential and reality of regenerative business, having been actively involved in collaborations with leading organizations around the world. In December 2017, Sally received an OBE in the Queen's New Year's Honours List for services to sustainability for business. Bupa has a long-standing relationship with Forum for the Future. They support us with the implementation of our sustainability strategy, and we're both founding partners of Climate and Health Coalition, a collaboration initiative to equip and mobilise the private sector to drive action on climate change. Sally Uran.
Thank you.
So maybe if I could ask Solly to come up and deliver the first keynote speech.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nigel. Okay, so I've been told to stand over here so you can see my glorious slides and see me at the same time. So my name is Solitaire, which my parents clearly had decided I was already going to be an entrepreneur, because there was no way I was going to be like a shop girl with that name. Like, I hated it when I was 11. I love it now. And you'll know how old I am by which Bond girl I'm named after. Now, I took on the term, 20 years ago, I did what you're doing. I set up my business 20 years ago. And in all those years, what I realized is that the job title co-founder is what I did in one day in the early noughties. That was the day that I founded the business. And so I needed a job title for what I do every day. And what I do every day is create solutions. And I didn't want to call myself a social entrepreneur, and I didn't want to call myself a change maker, because actually what I deal with in terms of climate change is a lot more serious than that. So that's why I use the term solutionist. And what I'm so excited about is when I started using it, there was about 11 other people on LinkedIn calling themselves a solutionist. And now, after I've been using it and I wrote a book about it, there's about 10 pages. So I hope you might take this job title on as well, because I believe this is what you already are. Now, we all know where we are at the moment. We're standing at this point in 2023, and on one side, we've got an extractive and exploitative economy, where there are more slaves on the planet now than there ever have been, where we're in the 6th mass extinction in terms of biodiversity, and where we're going to blow past 1.5 of climate change. Pretty sucky, extractive and exploitative economy. I believe on the other side, we have the solutions economy, an economy that is geared to clean up the problems that the 20th century gifted us. An economy that is a growth economy, but growing sustainably. Now, when I do this, when I show this, what I tend to get is a lot of people saying, well, yeah, but we're kind of fucked, aren't we? Like that ship has sailed. And actually, we know that 1 in 5 young people, 1 in 5 under 30s are now completely fatalistic about climate change. And I'm more afraid of that. I'm more afraid of fatalism than I am of climate change. Climate change is just chemistry. It is literally maths. We have got to stop putting carbon up there, and we've got to take the carbon that's already up there down. Human beings are much more complicated than that. Culture is more complicated than climate. And so actually, we have to start changing our story. Now, if this is how we planned climate action, I want you to go back about 20 years, shorter hair, smaller bottom. And when I was doing this work in the late 90s, we had these plans of how climate change was going to happen, how climate action was going to happen. And we were going to do this incremental change year on year. That's still our plan with net zero, that every year we're going to make this change. On this timeline, we are so far behind. We are so far behind where we should be. But thankfully, that's not how humanity changes. We do not change in linear ways. Our societies change exponentially, whether it's in how we adopt social change, in equal marriage, in prohibition, how we adopt technological change, like how the adoption of solar panels, how technology changes, which is always in one of these upward curves, and even how interest in topics. And Google is one of my clients, and they're fantastic. They share with me the trends that they track, and you see these bell curves of interest. So how we planned climate action to happen over time, we're about here, which is we're right on that edge of where the next 5 to 10 years are going to be really exciting. And we're going to see significant change, significant capital, and significant regulation coming into play in order to meet those targets in the time frame we've got to meet them. That's how societies change, and I'm really grateful for that because, as we said, otherwise we're fucked. So we've got this bell curve that's going to happen. Now, how's it going to happen? This is great. That's fantastic, but these bell curves never happen without people doing something. It always requires us to take action in order to push out that solutions economy and to make the solutions economy the majority of how life on Earth and our economies operate and squeeze out that extractive and exploitative economy. Now, one thing which I can tell you is that the people in the know, the people who are working on this, the scientists, the entrepreneurs, the business leaders who are working on social and environmental change, what I call the solutionists, are much more optimistic than the general public. With Ipsos Mori, I surveyed 21,000 people in 20 countries, and I asked them, are we going to solve climate change? And actually, a lot of the public are pessimistic or they're realistic in we could, but we probably won't. Quite a negative view that the public have of our chances of solving this. The solutionists, who, by the way, are much more informed in detail about the problems. They read the IPCC reports. They read the World Economic Forum reports. They understand in detail how bad things are overwhelmingly optimistic. And the reason they're overwhelmingly optimistic is because they know about people like you. They know about the solutions. They know the answers. They've actually seen not just the problem, they've seen the solutions and the fixes to it. But the wider public, the people who we interact with every day, our friends, our parents, sometimes even our colleagues, they have only seen the problem and they haven't seen the answers. So it's our job, it's the job of the people in the room, it's the job of the solutionists to sell those solutions. Climate change is communicating itself. It's taken that job over. It is with wild weather, with floods, with wildfires. We don't need any more effort going into communicating climate change. It's doing the job. We need to do the job of telling the story of the solutions. And we've also got to tell the story that these solutions have got a very big economic advantage to them. So these are McKinsey numbers. So McKinsey analysed what would be the economic value of moving society to net zero. And they calculated that the value generated, the value available of moving to net zero would be 4.5 trillion per year. That's the prize, that's the pot, that's the investment that should be out there as we make this transition across buildings, transport, stuff, money, nature, digital, health, culture. Now, that all sounds great, except that we know that publics, communities, consumers, governments, investors have this value action gap. That we all say we care about this, we all calculate the numbers, we all say we want to invest, we all say we want to buy, and then we don't. I want to just challenge that for a second, because over 80% of the public say that they want brands' help. They want businesses' help in order for them to lead more sustainable lives. And we also know from Google that during the pandemic and following the pandemic, searches for how to live a sustainable lifestyle and associated topics, such as recycling, eating differently, traveling differently, increased by 4,550%. So we don't have an intention-action gap. We have an intention-action barrier. There are things in the way of people making these differences. And those things are things such as price, availability, awareness, habits, trust, social acceptance. We have got a mountain between where we are and where we want to get to. And we know that as entrepreneurs because we often run straight into these things. Do people trust us? Is what we're asking for normal? Are people fatalistic? Have they given up? Over 2 decades of doing this work with many of the leading, biggest brands and lots of small startups, what I've discovered is the only thing that will bust through those barriers are benefits. We have to stop telling people that this is good for sustainability, that our product, our solution is good for sustainability, and start telling them how good it is for them. Now, as startups, you're probably better at this than big businesses are because you live and die by whether your customer or your consumer is happy. So you've probably already identified what are the functional benefits of what you're doing. Can it save money? Can it give more time in the day? Is it safer? Actually, is it delivering functional benefits beyond being good for sustainability? But I want you to also think about the emotional benefits and sell the emotional benefits of what you're doing. Is it more sensory enjoyment? Does what you're doing deliver more physical comfort? Does it help give someone self-worth? I never want to hear the word we. We've achieved this. We've done this. We've managed to do this. It's always you. You've saved this amount of carbon by investing in us. You've delivered this change in society by buying our product. Hand every achievement you've made and hand it over to your investors and your customers so that they get the sense of self-worth from having given you their money. And finally, social value. Up there is OkCupid. OkCupid did a survey online of who was getting dates. And what they realized is that 89% of women and 83% of men said it was important that their match on OkCupid cared about the environment. Basically, get woke, get laid. So, you know that Carl, go woke, go broke? It's like, this is the new one. Get woke, get laid. But these are social benefits. Like that, nobody wants to see companies greenwash, but individuals want to share their virtue signals. Individuals want to talk about what a great person they are for buying your product. So functional benefits, emotional benefits, social benefits. This all comes down to you. It all comes down to the solutionists in the room, whether we're able to sell the solutions, whether we're able to bring the optimism, whether we're able to sell the benefits. You already are solutionists. So I opened this saying, how to be a solutionist. You already are solutionist. But if you want to be a better one, feel free to read my book. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Okay, how to follow that? I don't have a line that has got laid and woke in it. I really haven't. I feel I should just go home now. But I'm not going to, actually. I'm going to stand in my allocated position because I'm going to pick up the story, actually, from where Solly left it, which is really, I'm going to try and make the case that by shifting our mindset, shifting how we see the world, the stories we tell ourselves, we really can all become solutionists. And I was paying attention to the title of this session, and build a culture where sustainable innovation thrives, because that was what we were supposed to be talking about. So just a nod to that particular subject. So really, we haven't compared notes, but we say very similar things, Solitaire and I. Why am I talking about mindsets? Why am I talking about mindsets as being so important for culture? Because when we think of where we are at this moment in time, we really are stuttering along the bottom of where we need to be. All of us that have been involved in sustainability, and Solly and I was saying to Nigel, we've been at this game probably longer than we care to remember. But we've kind of really tried our very, very hardest, and so have many of you all in this room. But at the moment, we're not where we need to be. We're kind of falling short of the progress that we need to see. And my version of Solly's slide, hers was prettier, it was kind of, more dynamic, is essentially a crossroads, because we can carry on doing what we have been doing, and that might get us to a slightly better version of the planet we have today, our society today, or, and this is my central ask of you all, we can do things differently. We can start to do things differently and track up that exponential change curve. So how then do we think about doing things differently? Well, for me, a lot of this starts with ambition, having really high transformational ambition. And in order to ground that in sustainability, in order to think about where do we want to get to, it's kind of useful to think about where we've been. The arc of history can often be very helpful. So when Solly and I first started to talk about sustainability, back when the dinosaurs were roaming the earth, 1.0 was really 20 years ago. It was kind of minimizing negative impacts. Then, maybe 15 years ago, 2.0, we started to talk about water neutrality, waste neutrality, carbon neutrality. Interestingly here in 2.0, no mention of social at all. That crept into net positive. Both Solly and I got very excited about net positive about 8 years ago. We both at the time were working with Kingfisher PLC. And there was a really, I really remember Ian Cheshire, who was the CEO at that point, just going, I want to be better than less bad. I want us as a business to put more back into society and into the environment than we take out. And that was really laudable. And so I got quite excited about that. With others, started to write principles about being net positive. And for a long time, I thought that, yeah, it's pretty ambitious. So Sustainability 3.0 was kind of doing it for me at that moment in time. But then it became really clear that just putting more back into environment, more back into society, without changing the underlying way in which things work, mean that, yes, if nature was a bank, we should have bailed it out a long time ago, but unless we change the way the world works, then we're going to always need a bailout. The simplest metaphor, imagine a bucket with a hole. We're filling it up with water. Unless we fix that hole, then we're going to need to keep filling it up. And that's where, for me, this notion of 4.0 is really, really critical. Yes, we need to put more back into society, more back into the environment than we take out, because our resources of natural assets are running low. We know that structurally our communities are not as strong as they need to be. But one of the reasons we haven't made the progress we need to make is because we haven't got serious enough about system change. We're trying to incrementally innovate systems that are at their limits. And so 4.0 is about really reconfiguring the systems around us to create a future that is both socially just and regenerative. Oh yeah, ESG is kind of somewhere in the middle. ESG isn't about just and regenerative, but that's probably a whole different conversation. So what do I mean by just and regenerative? It's recognizing the urgency and the reality of the planetary boundaries around us. It's recognizing that the way we create and distribute economic value today benefits a very, very small percentage of our world's population. One of the most sobering stats that I carry in my head, I carry a lot, but by 2030, if our economy carries on running along the same lines as that today, 95% of the world's wealth will be concentrated in 1% of the world's population. Unless we think very differently about our economy, it's going to be very difficult to get to that just and regenerative future. Just and regenerative is also about understanding as humans, we are inextricably linked with the health of our planet. I love the immersion as you walked in today. It made that point really clear. It's very hard to have healthy people without a healthy planet. We also need to really recognize everyone's potential to thrive. Everybody can thrive. And just and regenerative is underpinned by innovation and system change. So it is quite ambitious. It's a new way of thinking and acting. But what I want to make the case for is it's down to all of us. This isn't about access to billions of dollars of capital. This isn't about revolutionizing the economy. This isn't about massive changes in public policy. It's about us as individuals. And so what we've tried to do is to create a guide for how you can start to think about just and regenerative. We published this 18 months ago with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Take a look. It's quite a dense read, but it's got everything you need to know about there. What we talk about a lot is this notion of mindset. So how do we move from the risk mitigation mindset through to zero harm, through to do good, to just and regenerative? And what I want to do is just to bring this just and regenerative mindset to life for you, looking through the shifts that happen when we think about just and regenerative. First of all, it's about understanding potential. And the shift here is, how can we reduce risk to what's the potential that we're not seeing here? And this is why, as Forum, we got really interested in the intersectionality of climate and health. There's an approach to net zero which says it's a numbers game, we need to decarbonize. But if we start to see the potential of decarbonization through the lens of human health and well-being, we understand every net zero strategy can also deliver direct benefits for people and for the planet. And that's why with Bupa and other leading brands, we're so delighted to be hosting the Climate Health Coalition and setting out what every part of our private sector can do. So for healthcare, so much potential. All this innovation in this wonderful space has such potential to both solve for climate, but also generate positive health impacts as well. Simply reducing the carbon intensity of products can often deliver huge improvements for the environment and can actually also deliver improvements for patient care pathways. Digitalization, as we heard before, big tick for emissions, big tick often for health and well-being. Healthcare brands can increase the awareness amongst consumers, so important, as Solly was talking about, of the links between climate and health. Walking, great for our physical well-being, also really good for the climate. And what we've done within the Climate and Health Coalition is set out what every business can do in this space. The second attribute of just and regenerative is urgency. If any of you have net zero targets for 2050, come and chat afterwards, because it's too late. We need to be getting to net zero for Scope 1 and 2, our direct emissions, Scope 3 through our supply chain, 2030 or 2040, or just as soon as we possibly can. Number 3, resilience. I've heard this in so many procurement departments. Yeah, we've got problems with supply, particularly in the food system. We'll be able to switch supply. Really? I'm not sure actually going forward that's going to be the case. What we should be doing is building and investing in long-term partnerships, such as the partnerships that Bupa has with the disruptors that are on fabulous display in this venue today. Number 4, co-creation. The shift here is, how many times we heard, what our employees, communities, and suppliers need is ... But the shift here is, how do we co-design solutions with the people around us that really matter to our shared future? Then number 5, finally, is context-specific. I hear this a lot in healthcare. Our experts have worked out the solution. But with our just and regenerative mindset, we say it's essential we understand the specifics of context. The final thought to leave you is more good news, actually. So the good news is, it's down to us, our values, our belief. The other bit of good news is the future isn't written. The choices we make today will determine what happens next. So shifting our mindsets, getting up close and personal with that just and regenerative mindset could mean that we actually create the future that we want, a future where, in fact, yes, people and planet can thrive. So literally, changing our mindsets could change everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Fantastic. Something's making a funny noise. Hang on a minute. I think I sat on the transponder. Stay still, Nigel. If not, I'll go to this.
Would you use the handheld?
I'm going to go to this.
Testing. Okay.
You're going to sing us a song.
There you go. That's been done before,
Oh, okay.
Sally. And if you want to empty the room, that's a good way to do it. Look, you both. Thank you both. We're going to have a bit of a chat for a bit, and then we'll go to a break. You both talk very strongly about mindset, and it made me think about: is there a priority around, like, is it more important for organizations to have like a sustainability mindset, or actually is it more important to have a transformation mindset? What would your thoughts be on those?
I'll jump in because I think the mindset that's in this room is very different to the mindset that I see elsewhere. So a couple of weeks ago, I was at the Consumer Goods Forum Summit. The Consumer Goods Forum Summit is the CEOs of all the big supermarkets, the CEOs of all the big consumer goods companies. Some of them have been mentioned up here. Lot of white men. And it was a very managerial conversation. So it was very much about the next quarter. It was very much about the next. It was very much about net zero in terms of those incremental changes. And actually, we talk a lot about mindset, but there is a mindset that assumes radical, swift, exponential change. And it's the entrepreneurial mindset. The entrepreneurial mindset is automatically a little bit weird, a little bit wild, a little bit optimistic, believes that things are possible that might not seem possible at the moment, can sit at the bottom of the well looking up at the outside. That entrepreneurial mindset is something which we need to see much more in all parts of society, and particularly in big business. And I think it's one of the reasons why we're seeing so many things such as accelerators, such as this. This obviously is brilliant for the people that you're supporting. It's fantastic for these incredible, amazing solutionists. But it's also fantastic for Bupa, because actually you get some of their energy, that entrepreneurial mindset, that like, wow, it's 1,000 to 1 chance, but it might just work. That can come into the organization and maybe help very large businesses where it's much harder to make big changes quickly, actually sort of infect and let in, infect's the wrong word at a Bupa conference, let in some of that entrepreneurial mindset inside the company. And to sort of, the other thing being, it's a lot more fun being an entrepreneur than it is being a manager. A manager means staying up late, looking at next quarter's numbers and wondering when you're going to hit it. An entrepreneur means staying up late, coming up with a new product or a new solution. So the entrepreneurial mindset, much more open, much more inventive, much more creative, and much more fun.
Thank you. I want to come back to you on that. Yeah.
On the point of, is it sustainability or is it transformation? I actually think that's a false choice, because actually, if we're really getting serious about sustainability, it is about transformation. And I think often when we're talking about sustainability issues, we do find it easy to go into false choices. So do I put environment first, or do I put societal first? Do I put short-term profit maximization first, or do I put long-term value creation first? Actually, what we need to do is to put all these things together, and that's also that kind of mindset shift is, as humans, we do like to compartmentalize. We do like to have, that's there, that's there, that's there. The world isn't like that. The world is a set of messy, interconnected systems. And so I think if we can all step over false choices, so for any organization serious about playing their role in creating the future that we know is possible, but will require really radical change right now, it's getting really serious about a transformation mindset. That will deliver something different and something better.
Thank you both. Sort of a semi-related point. Sally, one of your slides had the 2050, 2040 thing. Now, we've gone for the 2040 space and 2030 for scope 1 and 2. Iñaki kind of mentioned it this morning. We don't actually know how to get to 2040 yet. No. I mean, we're making good progress on the scope 1 and 2, amazing progress. But I just wanted to sort of get your thoughts on that balance between, because Bupa's a growing company. We're growing, which is great. But sustainability and growth and those targets. Just your thoughts for people in the audience, what you might think about that?
Again, on one level, a false choice, because you can be very successful and grow bottom line profitability without necessarily in building out your carbon emissions, because a lot of the technology that we need to decarbonize, it's already there. But the first point of your question was you don't know how to get there. I'm really relieved to hear that, because if you told me right now, listen up, Sally, I know totally how we're going to get to net zero for scope 3 by 2040, I actually wouldn't believe your commitment to that target, because actually the truth is right now we don't know exactly how we're going to get to that sort of last mile. We don't have ready access to all of the solutions at the price that we perhaps need them. And that's why all the organizations we work with at Forum, they all have an innovation gap, which is kind of what you've got out here. So your partnership with all of these eco-disruptions, that's addressing your innovation gap. So my advice for any organization is be more comfortable with the fact that you don't have all of the answers. Nobody has got all of the answers when it comes to scope 3 carbon emissions. But remember that someone's scope 1 is your scope 3. So by collaborating, working together, we can get there. And innovation will really come into its own and will allow us to scale a lot of the technologies that are out there at the edge and bring them in. So great, you don't have all the answers. That tells me that you're serious. Great that you're taking innovation really seriously. Everybody needs to do that. And brilliant that you're seeking the inspiration and creativity of entrepreneurs and disruptors to get there.
I 100% agree, which is going to be a really boring theme of this panel. We 100% agree. When I was sitting there listening to the amazing panel of entrepreneurs we had just now, it couldn't help occur to me that none of them can sign up for net zero. The reason why they can't sign up for net zero is that their growth trajectory will be so significant that it will be incredibly difficult for them to hit a 90% reduction on what was essentially someone's bedroom in their first year. And so what we've got at the moment is how the whole carbon accounting world works is it's all about reducing the problem. It's all about reducing the problem. How can you cut? There's nothing in the accounting world that allows us to grow the solution. Until recently. So in the Race to Zero, there's one organisation associated with the Race to Zero who sets all these rules, which is the Exponential Roadmap. And they've created a new category, which is called a climate solutions provider. So a climate solutions provider, like Futerra, we're allowed to increase our carbon footprint. We're actually allowed to grow our carbon footprint, as any climate solutions provider is now under the Race to Zero. So a company that's starting out doing something which the UN classes as a climate solution, i.e. it will help save so much more carbon than it creates. Like, for example, a solar panel. It takes a certain amount of carbon to make a solar panel. And if you're a solar panel company, you could not sign up to the Race to Zero because all the carbon you're going to produce creating those solar panels, you do have to calculate, but the carbon that you're going to save, you can't offset that. So what we need is we need ways to incentivize and measure the benefit of the solutions, not just the do less bad. And it comes back to what Lucy was saying about net positive. We've all got to do that less bad, but we've got to do more. Sally, did I just call you sorry?
You did. No, you called me Lucy.
20 years of working together. My head is off.
You call me Lucy, yeah,
is to do more good. We've got to find ways to incentivize and measure our ability as entrepreneurs to do more good. And I think there's a lot of people in this room who would actually count as a climate solutions provider under the UN. Look it up if you haven't heard of it before.
Thank you. Good advice. Do you know something? I thought it was the fault of the accountants, you know.
Oh.
I suspected this all along, and they've all gone home. Just on names, you know, I was going to say this earlier, but my surname's Sullivan, so my nickname as a kid was Sully, and I was thinking, this is going to be really difficult, because you've got Sally, Solly, and Sully. I mean...
Done. We're taking it on the road, the album will be out soon.
Yeah. It wouldn't make a very good radio play, would it? I mean, collaborations come up all through today. I'm sure it'll come up again. Any thoughts, tips, examples of really great collaboration? We see that as absolutely critical for us. Our Mission Accelerate sort of central pillar is, a lot of that's about collaboration, and you are collaborators with us. But it'd be great to hear that, because we one of the things, we don't feel alone, but we know we can't do this alone.
Yeah. Oh, one of my favourite topics, but not enough time. So I guess collaboration will underpin the transformation that we need to see, because not only is it a fact that no one organisation has access to the solutions and is big enough to really create the massive ripples of change, but going back to systemic change, you need the system to work together. And that's a lot of the work we do at Forum, is creating the space where the big brands, the big businesses can engage directly with, in our regen ag work, the smallholder cotton farmer. So collaboration is a fundamental feature of systemic change. And sometimes that can be hard, because it might mean collaborating with your competitors. One of the collaborations, as you know, that we're most proud of right now is the collaboration with Bupa and Haleon, Reckitt, Walgreens Boots Alliance, and Bristol Myers Squibbs on the Climate and Health Coalition. And within those list of 5, there are 2 direct competitors in there. So collaboration is critical. It might mean feeling a bit uncomfortable, particularly when we're facing big challenges about how do we engage the entire private sector. My high dream would be, imagine if every net zero carbon strategy also spelt out health benefits for employees, for community. It's totally possible at the moment. Yeah. We're treating them completely separately. And so in order to collaborate, be comfortable collaborating with sometimes, your competitors, and that's why that pre-competitive space is super important. So the best collaboration I see is where there's a little bit of discomfort, a little bit of, I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing, and also a willingness to do things differently. So Solly and I have been involved in many, many collaborations, and there's always a point at which maybe you need to shift your business model, maybe you need to shift your investment flow, maybe you need to do something that you didn't really want to do in the first place. And that's often where collaborations just really splinter away. So putting something in that might be a little bit more painful is really, really important. Because systemic change is hard. It requires everyone to do something differently and often to give things up. So it's fundamental. There's a lot happening. We're at the point where we now need to be really serious, and that might mean doing things a little bit differently and being a little bit uncomfortable.
Do you know what? I'm so pleased that you talked about it being difficult and uncomfortable, because I think you get a lot of this about collaboration. Yeah, collaborate, as if it's like motherhood and apple pie. It's really hard to collaborate. It's really difficult. It requires compromise. You have to give stuff up. You have to be honest. It's very, very difficult to collaborate. And if we go in sort of trotting into a collaboration, thinking everything's going to be hunky-dory and easy, it will fail. Because often, particularly for entrepreneurs, if you're an entrepreneur, chances are you're a pretty driven person. You might have a strong personality. In order to be able to get something off the ground, you've had to be extremely clear about what you're prepared to do. You've bled and cried and sweated to make it happen. You're not an easy person to collaborate with. You're really not. You're probably some of the hardest people to collaborate with on the planet, because you're focused, driven, type A, entrepreneurial type people. So first of all, accept that. It's hard. I do not play well with others. It is hard for me to collaborate. And by admitting that about myself, it makes it much easier for me to then go into a collaboration, giving myself a good telling off about the fact that I'm going to have to compromise. I'm going to have to be clear about what my boundaries are, but what I'm allowed to give up. If somebody asks for something, I'm not going to say no automatically. I'm going to be prepared to give things up for the sake of the collaboration. And Futerra went into collaboration with Mars Pet Care. Mars Pet Care, one of the biggest pet care companies in the world. And we collaborated with them to create a new product called Love Bug, which is an insect-based cat food, 100% insect-based cat food. We might have to eat insects for the future, but I'd quite like to feed them to the pets first, being as 1/4 of meat produced for humanity goes to pets. And this was like a tiny little agency in a huge, great big business. And what it turned out was that it was all about the relationships and being able to admit that we were scared, that we were challenged, that there was difficulties, and then being able to say, we don't understand how you work. Why don't you have all the processes that a large multinational would have? What do you mean you don't have all of that set up when there's 20 of you? And to be able to have that honesty. It also, however, means that if someone moves, if an individual changes job, you have to admit that the collaboration is going to probably go on pause until you've rebuilt that relationship with new people. So go into collaborations. That's the only way to get things done. Salary is 100% right. But don't go into collaborations sort of expecting it to be easy and giving it all that. Go into collaborations having a big talk to yourself first about what you're going to be prepared to give up, and that you might have to be slightly less of the boss in every situation if it's going to be a true collaboration.
Thank you. One of the things we've tried to do today is probably make this more about other people than about us, to be honest with you. But there is, and we did talk about this before we went set up Eco-D Live. There's a danger of greenwashing, being for us. There's a danger for us of being brand greenwashers doing this. I'll happily answer any criticism about that if it comes up. But what is greenwashing to you, and what isn't it to you when you think about that? Because it comes up a lot, and it seems to be becoming more and more prevalent.
So there's loads of rules about greenwashing, and I wouldn't want to say what it was to me and not say go and check the rules. Go and check the rules. There's lots of them, and there's new rules that have just come in the UK. So the Advertising Standards Authority and the Green Claims Code and the CMA have just brought in new rules. The EU is about to bring in a massive set of rules about greenwash. So there are rules of greenwash. However, there's also perception of greenwash. And perception of greenwash, people feeling that they're being lied to, is often as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than breaking the rules. So just because you're legally not lying doesn't mean that people don't think you're lying. So greenwash almost always happens as a mistake rather than malicious. There is malicious greenwash, oil companies, but a significant proportion of greenwash is people getting massively over-enthusiastic about something they're doing and going out with a huge amount of energy and enthusiasm to talk about it to the world without realizing that there's always a left hand to the right hand. There is always going to be something you're doing that isn't perfect when there's something that you're doing that is. So the one piece of advice I always tell people is talk about what's not perfect rather than what is. Talk about your problems. Talk about where you're challenged. Talk about where you're not sustainable. Talk about that 80% and talk about what you're doing which is right 20%. Because chances are that is the ratio of what you're doing on sustainability. Chances are 80% of what you're doing on sustainability isn't right and 20% is. And also, if you're talking more about your challenges, your failures, what isn't going well, what you're having to work on, compared to what you're actually succeeding on, bluntly, it will be more believable. Because when anyone looks out of the window, the idea that anybody is perfect on sustainability is clearly bollocks, because things are challenging and difficult out there. So if you're saying that you're perfect in an imperfect world, it's greenwash. If you're saying you're struggling, you're challenged, there's reasons why you can't do some things, and these are those reasons. You've got big visions, but you're very humble about where you've got, then it's not greenwash.
Thank you.
As rather predictably, 100% agree. And my advice to anybody is just be open and honest and authentic. If you can be those three things, then you'll probably avoid greenwash, because no one has all the answers and no one is perfect. And that humility and humbleness is really critical. And I would rather hear a company say, yeah, we don't know how we're going to get there, but this is how we're going to try, and we're going to keep you updated as we go. It's much more believable than, yay, we've got all the answers. So openness, honesty, humility, transparency.
And on that point, I'm a sucky environmentalist. I fly so much, my doctor told me I couldn't fly anymore.
She's quite obsessed about this.
Because I'm in a high DVT risk, literally medically dangerous amount of flying. That's my carbon cap. I'm terrible at my food waste. I am vegetarian, but mainly because it's a really easy way to be green. Like you just go, I'm just not going to eat meat. So also to be really honest about the fact that as an individual, I suck at being an environmentalist. I am participating in the world that I'm trying to change. Because if you go right up front with that, then it means that no one's going to call you out on it. If you say, I really suck at being green, and I'm really trying, and there's some things which I'm trying to do really well, and there's some things which I just don't know what the solution is for it. Also, flying kind of sucks, but being in other countries are amazing. So can the airlines please sort that out so that I can actually travel more? To be able to actually talk honestly about what you're facing as an individual, as well as your organization, means that people will believe you, because nobody is a perfect environmentalist. Or at least I would really like to meet the perfect environmentalist.
And with that, thank you very much, Solly and Sally.
Thank you, Sully.
And Sully.
I think our planet definitely needs more Sullys, Sullys, and Sullys. We'd be in a much better spot if we had them. Thank you to our speakers for that amazing dose of inspiration, and also for what you said about collaboration. It is hard, there are challenges, it's messy, but there is so much to gain from doing it and doing it right. We now have a 30-minute break where you can go grab some refreshments, maybe try out the bikes out there, try out the innovations, and then come back recharged for the last panel discussion of the day, which is going to be super special. Thank you.